Good afternoon. Did I stalk you? All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Teresa McLaurin. I'm the DEI chair for ITC this year. And I wanted to bring something in to help us all understand more about DEI in allyship, because a lot of us think, well, wait a second, I am an ally, I help people, and we don't really understand what's the big deal. So we've asked Ruth Cotter to come in and talk about it a bit, but before that, I wanted to thank the IEEE Computer Society for sponsoring DEI and our lunches, as well as Jyotika Atavali, and I'd like to invite Jyotika to come up. She is a director of RAS Architecture at Synopsys, and she's also the president of the IEEE Computer Society. So, Jyotika.
Thank you very much, Teresa, and thank you so much for organizing this panel. This is really special. I'd like to thank all of the organizers of ITC for organizing this great conference, and it's been an honor to be here today and participate in this very important topic. So I just wanted to share a few slides describing the work that we do in the Computer Society, specifically on D&I, which is very central and integral to our goals and our mission. So it's not just something that we do to support activities, but it is a commitment that we make, and it's a theme that belongs and is purposefully built into each one of our activities and initiatives, in all of the different program board areas and all of the activities that we drive in our initiatives. So here's the maintaining the focus in D&I. This is part of our 2024-2025 Computer Society Strategic Plan and our goals, which are to engage more representation from industry, more early career professionals. But in all of the activities that we do, in all of the technical activities, including the conferences, standards, publications, chapter activities, educational programs, we try to maintain or make that effort to promote representation from D&I communities, including women, including people across ages, across geos, across different technical disciplines, because we firmly believe that doing that will enhance the value of what we do as a community. So some of our goals and initiatives described here, we have within the Computer Society Board of Governors, we have a D&I committee that is a standing committee that reports to the Board of Governors and drives new initiatives on various different topics, such as webinars, such as collaborating with other societies. One of the new things that I'll talk about in the next slide, we work closely with the IEEE Women in Engineering organization, and we are bringing back a conference, international leadership conference focused on women, promoting their development from mid to senior level women. And so that will come back next year in May of 2025 in San Jose. I'll be serving as general chair for that, working closely with the Women in Engineering organization. But we also have a grant program that we drive each year. So it's a D&I grant program, and we do a call each year where we encourage submissions, and then we award financial support for some of those selected projects. In addition, we also do have a foundation fund that we have in conjunction with the IEEE Foundation, where we set aside a certain dollar amount each year for D&I initiatives. So here's more about that Women in Engineering International Leadership Conference, and we just had a call for speakers that where submissions, the submission deadline was this weekend, this past weekend, and now we are working to define the program, the registration, and we really look forward to your participation and support. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Nitza. Nitza Basoco will moderate this next session here. She is a technologist and strategist for marketing at Teradyne. Thanks.
Thank you so much. What's this one? Hello. Thank you, Jyotika. Today we're going to have a very open and as transparent as chat as possible. I know it's important that we give you insight on our journeys and how impactful allyship has been along the way. But before I get started, I want to ask the audience a few questions. How many here are DFT engineers? How about test development engineers? How many have been in the industry less than 5 years? How many have been less than 20 years? And how many over 20 years? I've been in the industry for over 23 years. I started my career off at Teradyne as a factory applications engineer. Then I went to Broadcom, and I was the first female test development engineer. 7 years later, there was 200 test development engineers. I was test development engineer number 23, and only 8 women. And I loved my time as a TDE. I loved it. But since then, I've done everything possible to ensure that my departments were as diverse as possible. I'd like to introduce, joining me for a fireside chat, Ruth Cotter, Senior Vice President at AMD, overseeing marketing, communications, as well as human resources. She has led the company during a large period of growth, where they have seen the workforce more than double with a strong focus on diversity, inclusion, with improved company policies, benefits, and company engagement. I love that AMD is increasing awareness with their campaign, Together We Advance. Ruth led the company through successful acquisition of Xilinx in 2022, and will again do so as AMD has announced their intention of acquiring ZT Systems. Ruth is the executive sponsor of AMD Pride and Women's Forum employee resource groups. She serves on the GSA Women's Leadership Council, where she is active in initiatives that provide inspiration and sponsorship for the next generation. Please help me in welcoming Ruth Cotter. Hi. Thank you, Ruth. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm happy to be in San Diego. I travel a lot, so it's an absolute pleasure to be able to fly in and fly out of somewhere in the same day. So thank you for that opportunity.
You're welcome. Welcome to San Diego. Now, just wanted to kick off with a definition.
Yeah.
What is, or how would you define being an ally?
Oh, being an ally can take many forms. I think it can take the form of sponsorship. It can take the form of advocacy. It can take the form of being a really good listener. And I think really if I look at it at the highest level, it's how can we mirror the society in which we live every day in the workplace and generate energy to make that replicable.
I'll completely agree. And I love that you said listening and active listening. So it's really important to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Now, is there a story that you can share with the audience of when you needed an ally and there was somebody there and was a good ally to you?
Yeah, some years ago, I was a manager in the finance organization, and I felt I was ready for promotion. And my peers and the next level of leadership felt I was ready for promotion. And the conversation that happens around your promotion, you're never there. Well, you're very rarely there. So you're reliant on everybody else in the room to advocate for you and on your behalf. Well, the CFO at the time, Bob, decided there wasn't a snowball's chance that I should be promoted, and I was not ready for promotion. I own responsibility for that, obviously, because I hadn't shown him that I was probably ready. But my ally, Devinder, spoke up on my behalf in my absence because he really knew me. And he did it in a voice that I probably would have chosen to do for myself as well. And he convinced Bob to, let's not disagree on whether she's ready or not, but let's give her a chance. Let's give her an opportunity for 6 months. And if she doesn't succeed in the way that you imagine she may not, then that's fine. But let's give her the interim opportunity. And because of Devinder and him investing in me and knowing what was important to me, I got the opportunity, and I've never looked back.
That's perfect.
It's my 23rd year at AMD, and I've happily moved along in my career there. So it's been great. Thanks to Devinder.
Yeah, thankfully for that ally.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but you mentioned that your CFO wasn't an ally.
No.
And is there any other time in your career where you felt that somebody you were hopeful that they would be an ally to you, but the way that they presented it or came across didn't work quite so well for you?
Yeah, I'm the kind of person who thinks, good things happen those who work hard. A little old schoolish, but that's kind of the way I have operated within my career. And one of our CEOs, long time before our current CEO, but I always thought he was very supportive. I would have called him an ally of mine, always encouraging me to take on more things. But as I looked over it, there was no fuel coming back from taking on additional work. There was no promotion path, there was no career path for me. And I kind of woke up one day and I'm like, I'm taking on all these other things, but I'm really not going anywhere. Well, it turned out he really wasn't an ally. He wanted me exactly where I was in the company doing this additional work because he wanted me to be part of the team that I was on, serving the company in that way, and had no desire or investment in advancing my career, which is why I was investing in all these other things. So it was a hard lesson to learn, and maybe taught me to read the signals a little bit better. But yeah, that was I think a two-way street in terms of me feeling like I was being led to believe that I was being supported and invested in when I really wasn't.
So what were some of the signals that you wish you would have noticed beforehand, and things that you would have changed?
Yeah, I mean, I think the additional opportunities that came my way, I saw them as opportunities for growth, because I love learning, and I really enjoy feedback and acting on that feedback. Mm-hmm. But I think the amount of additional projects that I had taken on was probably silly on my part, and I should have sort of consulted with others as to what is this laddering towards if I think about specializing. At that time, I specialized in Wall Street and investor relations, and how was it taking on a social project or a human resource project, laddering me up as part of a Wall Street career. It just didn't make sense.
Right, so kind of looking forward in advance and trying to see what's the impact of what you were doing today to move you forward. Looking
around the corner, right? You want any journey that we all take, even if it's not immediately kind of what might be aligned with career advancement or whatever it is you're dealing with, knowing that there's a forward plan over the next 3 to 5 years and that you're looking around the corner, so it's adding up for some good is a good thing.
No, it's very good advice.
Yeah.
And what do you believe your role is being an ally?
Well, now I have the privilege of the role I have at the company, so I get to talk to a lot of people around the world. Sharing my experiences, I think, is hopefully informative for people, and will help you as you go back to your own teams and think about their experiences and try and walk in their shoes. I have learned that talking really is 80% listening and only 20% of actually words coming out of your mouth. So I practice that a lot. I'm Irish. I grew up in Europe. I work in the US in an American company that has US-centric business protocols and environment, but we're a very global company. There's a lot of baggage that just surrounds me, so making sure that I can sort of put that down and really try to stand in somebody else's shoes and understand how I'm being received by them, and am I being effective in my ability to help them in whatever moment or the moment that matters that they find themselves in. I think is really, really important. And then investing in the next generation of people either in the company or we'd like to attract into the industry, I think is really, really important. The industry is working very hard to continue to diversify and to be really inclusive, but it is disappointing if you think about the amount of money as a collective we're all investing as companies, and are we really materially moving the needle? So there's more to be done, particularly as you think about the backdrop of artificial intelligence and sort of the new education system, and it's also fresh and new. How do we attract more diverse communities to want to pursue that and to pursue our industry? So trying to help with all that.
And so how do you help with the companies create a strategy to work with the universities? Yesterday in Phil Nye's meeting, some of the professors said that they have to make a test attractive to their students, right? AI is all the mode. So what are the things that we need to do in order to ensure that the institutes have what they need in order to bring people into the semiconductor industry?
Yeah, for us, we've gone from being quite a small company to now being a very big company. It really is about relationships. In the early days, it was harnessing people who had, strong relationships or personal preference for maybe their own alma mater or whatever it might be, and getting in with some of the professors there, lending into the curriculum and influencing the curriculum, donating product, donating time. Has been very, very beneficial, and universities have really responded to that. As you think about the area of underrepresented communities, we do a lot of work with the HBCUs, the historically black colleges and universities, as well as the Hispanic institutions, to really bring them also in exchange into the workplace, where you can have those exchange programs between technology, helping write some of the curriculum, and then bringing people in for practical experience into your company. Even if it's a couple of students, it makes a huge difference. And then you build from there. The other area is actually through industry associations, right? I think many people here have different engagements. IEEE does, the GSA does, the SIA, all the different industry associations, and you can also participate through those if you're very small and you can't really move the needle on your own.
Oh, that's great. I know that as a small company, I did a lot of stuff with GSA in order to kind of put our name out there.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. So then if you look internally to AMD, what specific strategies has the company implemented to advance women and underrepresented employees to leadership positions?
Yeah, it's very important, as we want to have a very inclusive workplace, that we have role models for employees as they think about, what is it I might aspire to, and learning from that. We're obviously highly privileged with Lisa Su as our CEO. She's absolutely incredible and an amazing role model for anyone, anywhere in the world.
Actually at GSA Wish last year, she mentioned that she has a lot of men coming into her office saying, I want your job, but no women.
No, never. Yeah. Still, even when she said it, still hasn't happened yet.
It still hasn't happened? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I don't know, is anyone brave enough out there though, really? She's just kind of redefined what being a CEO is. It's a high bar.
It's a high bar.
So what we want to do is really cultivate leadership paths and leadership tracks, in particular for some of our employees who might never imagine that they have that available to them. Right. So it's done through learning and development. It's done through a series of projects, so mapping out sort of a development track for our employees, putting them through different training. We have women in technology training that has a new effort that we're doing that is really, you've got the sort of academia, educational piece, you've got the practical application in the workplace, you have a dedicated mentor, you do real 360 feedback with a coach to help you interpret that and sort of reapply it. And then your journey is followed for 18 months through the success of that program. That's proved really, really good. And then we have different groups across the company where we bring sort of like-minded people together to support themselves. So we have a lot of employee resource groups. So I'm sponsor of the women's group and the pride group. We have 14 different groups across the company that has really cultivated opportunities where people can come together and really share in a safe place. And where a lot of us can also participate and learn that what works for me as a HR professional sitting in Santa Clara in California is not what's going to work for a software engineer sitting in Bangalore. So there's a lot of that cultivation of multi-voices across the table, which we think lends to some of our culture strength.
That's amazing. And is there one specific strategy that works better over the other? Is it location specific?
Yeah, it does vary sometimes by location because there's different cultural experiences. So we find at the end of the day, people actually really enjoy the learning and development activities, but they want a thread back to some connection in the workplace. So this sort of, I call it being a MAC. You can be a mentor, an advocate, a coach, or a connector. And you can be one of those things at different stages of your career, but you can also need those things at different stages of your career.
Right.
So we make sure that people who come out of our development activities, if they need a mentor or a coach, depending on what it is they need, we follow them on that journey to make sure that there's somebody there to help them interpret what they've learned or experienced kind of live in real work moments. If they feel like maybe they're being drowned out or they're not being heard or their ideas are being taken by somebody else as their ideas, that they can have, you know, a trusted conversation with someone to help them and guide them how to actually handle that situation and help the person maybe who's drowning them out sort of respond more positively. And often it's just because people aren't really thinking and it's kind of in the heat of the moment.
Right.
And it's good to call these things out sometimes. So.
And sometimes it's just helpful to have somebody to think about things with, right?
Yeah.
And to understand, did I do something here to help propagate something? Is it not me? Is it somebody else? Could I have done something different and to work through it? So
Yeah, and it's not for life either. Like I know certainly when I started being sort of a mentor, I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm truly committed to this person forever. But you can only give so much depending on your own experiences and where you are in your career to somebody else. And that's why I like the versatility of being a MAC, because you have different needs at different phases. Like sometimes, even now, I need coaching, but most of the time I just need somebody to tell me I'm not losing my mind and it's okay, and just keep going, you're fine. But, 12 years ago, I needed somebody to say, hey, you're being a bit Irish, which would mean the code for being a bit Irish was I was probably being a bit direct, whereas, I could be softer and still land the message or the feedback I was trying to deliver a little bit more elegantly.
Right.
So again, we all have different needs.
And was that a coach who actually gave you that feedback, or somebody else within the company?
It was. So at AMD in my day, it's changed a little bit. When you became a CVP, it was like this intense analysis that you had to go through. You went off to this simulation for 2 days, and you were running a company, and there were these people behind a wall that were observing you. You had an email, your inbox was filling with emails, your phone was ringing with imaginary board of directors, people screaming at you, where's my presentation? To just sort of really make sure you were well-rounded.
Threw you off a little.
It was very
pressure.
stressful. But you got so much feedback. Like you got those coaches in the simulation feedback. They did 360s in your company. They talked to all sorts of people in your sphere. And it was a lot. And at the time, the coach said to me, yes, it all matters. You're experienced, you can't forget you're experienced. You are who you are. It's not going to materially change, but you just need to round your edges a little bit. And he said, pick the one thing that offends you the most. Like, what is the one thing that you fundamentally disagree with and hurts the most privately? And he said, that's what you need to work on, because that's your blind spot, because you are unconsciously, immediately disagreeing with this thing.
Right.
And he said, it's somebody's truth, and you have to respect that as their truth. And it's going to test you as to whether you're really interested in investing in your growth or not.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and I've always held that true. Too much information, but my boss told me the other day I wasn't ambitious, and I was so offended by it, because I'm like, oh my God, like, if you knew me, like, my job changes every 6 months. I'm doing something different. And her perspective was, well, you've been at AMD for 23 years. I don't know that that's ambitious. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting, and I'm so offended. And then I'm thinking about, okay, how can I defend this? And then I'm like, what am I doing? Like, that's not what this is about. This is, let me help you understand why I'm ambitious, and that's actually why I've been here for 23 years. So again, it's just, pausing, absorbing, listening, and then helping ensure that you are representing yourself and sharing.
Right. No, that's great advice, and I'll have to remember that in the future.
Yeah. Hopefully nobody will tell you you're not ambitious.
What role does industry collaboration and policy advocating in driving systematic change to increasing diversity in semiconductors?
Yeah, it's very important. We're a huge global industry. We're extraordinarily diverse if you just think geographically and nothing else. It's incredible. But there's so much more that we can do and so much more to be done. It is amazing the communities that we are building. Like I said, I'm 53. When I started in my career 23 years ago at AMD, and I think about just our company right now, I'm so incredibly proud and excited by it. But we can't do it alone. Thankfully, we're a bigger company now, so we do have more market influence than perhaps we've had before, and more people care about what we're doing. But it is really partnering with the Semiconductor Industry Association. It's partnering with the GSA, the Global Semiconductor Association, sponsoring different activities, sharing our voice and our experiences, but also really reaching out to all our stakeholder groups, right? We're very present in communities, so making sure that we're engaging actively with the communities. We're very involved in education, in the types of people we're hiring and wanting to attract to our industry. We deal with Wall Street a lot. Shareholders, we're public companies. They're very interested in what we're doing and how we're advancing, in particular underrepresented groups. And then on the government side, making sure that we are there representing policy and that we are, collectively pushing things forward. So it's having that agenda, it's having goals, just like Teresa and her colleague showed here earlier about the focus of where we want to be and staying true to them, and really calling them out in every opportunity we have. And then it's working with peers. We may be competitors in one way, but in so many other ways we're not. We're friends. We're friends and we are colleagues, even if our paychecks come from different companies. And the more we can bring the collective together to push the agenda forward, the more progress we will make.
Yeah, no, I agree, because sometimes everybody says, Teradyne and Advantest, you guys don't talk.
Right.
But actually some of my good friends are from there.
Yeah.
So I love that, right? Because you're human.
You are. We are at the end of the day.
Yeah. And now you've talked about a lot of the ERG groups that you have within AMD, and a lot of that comes to fostering a sense of belonging, right? And so what are some of the key initiatives that you put through in order to foster that sense of belonging within the company?
Yeah, our founder 55 years ago, Jerry Sanders, had this sort of ethos that he rested the company on, which was people first, products and profits will follow. In the Lisa Su world, it's probably people, products, and profits. But the thinking is that no matter how amazing your technology or IP or capability is, at the end of the day, we're reliant on the people in the company and a vibrant and positive culture to lift the profitability of the entities that we are. And we've maintained that culture. It's been very important that we are people-centric. It's something we highly value. As I said earlier, the ERGs are a big part of it as we think about embracing everyone's preferences and diversity and creating conversation and allowing free-forming voices. Because the more voices you have, it brings it then to the decision-making table. And let's put it all on the table, let's think about it, because even if we don't adopt certain things, to have thought about them wholesomely and thoroughly by having the conversation, you'll make a better decision. There's just no doubt about it. Learning and development is something that's very, very important. Feedback is something we thrive on as a company. We have something called the Next 5% that we celebrate at AMD, which is even if you're doing the most mundane or repetitive of projects or tasks, your goal every day is to leave it 5% better than when you touched it yesterday. And all those increments add up to something really big as you look back over your shoulder after a number of months. And as we think about advancing diversity, it can be very daunting and it can feel huge. So we've put it into, for our annual bonus, we have 3 financial metrics that make up 80% of our bonus. And then we have 20% of our bonus, which is tied to something called strategic milestones. And these strategic milestones are important things to the company, like certain product tapeouts or quality metrics. And last year we added the number of female and underrepresented group level of hiring we wanted to do in the company in a given year. That has helped some of our leaders think about the global pool of talent available to us, and we all shouldn't be hiring people just like us. And that's really helped advance that. So we've had some good progress there. And then last but not least, we have a program called Advance at AMD, which is our internship program. And we really use everyone that we've brought through our learning and development programs to allow interns to shadow them for 6 to 9 months period, and to give them a rotation of experiences so that if it helps them decide what they don't want to do, that's as good as ultimately helping them get to where they want to be. Exactly. So we spend quite a bit of time on that as well, and that's something that's gotten really good feedback.
That's perfect. Before I open it up to the audience for questions, what advice would you give the people in the audience in being a good ally?
First of all, be interested. Just be interested in the people in your team, or if you don't have a team, the people you work with. Listen. When you're in meetings or you're working on projects, there's always somebody who has ideas, but for some reason, that person's ideas aren't heard. And if you can just, in a moment, pause and recognize that person and what it is they've been trying to say, and invite them and invite the room to listen to the point that they were trying to make, it's huge. It's huge for that person, but it's also huge for the company that you're keeping in that moment. And once you do that a few times, it really opens up the direction that future engagements can take. So I would definitely encourage you to do that. And I would encourage you to just reflect on being a Mac. Maybe you need a Mac yourself, so mentor, advocate, coach, or connector. You can be that. You can be that to anyone. You don't have to be a leader. You don't have to be a manager to do that. But if you commit to it, please listen. And think about talking being 80% listening and 20% actual words out of your mouth.
Great advice. Thank you so much.
Sure.
So I wanted to open up for questions in the audience. Is there any questions that you would like to ask Ruth? There's microphones at the edge here.
Hello, hi. I'm Khushbu from AMD.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. Thank you. Good, thank you. I have a question about mentorship versus sponsorship, right? So these two terms look very similar, but there are subtle differences. So you talked about mentorship programs, right? So what can we do to, also get, some sponsorship? Because when it comes to promotions, we're also looking for that kind of support and allies, right? So any thoughts about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So sponsorship, you're probably looking for, well, you're not probably. For sponsorship, you're looking for somebody who's going to be in the room when you and your career are being discussed in your absence. So you need to sort of identify who those people are, and then you need to invite them to be a coach, to help connect you to others, invite them to get to know you, share with them where you are in your career, share with them what's important to you, what motivates you. I call it your employee value proposition. What is it that you see yourself doing in the next 3 to 5 years, and making sure that they know that, because often in the room, it's not necessarily the promotion, but it's the projects that come up along the way. It'll be like, oh, okay, like I'm running integration for ZT Systems. I don't get a ZT Systems integration team, so I'm plucking people around the company, and it's very easy for me to go to my go-to list of people that I know. But when I ask my peers and colleagues, well, who should be on my team, they were like, oh, well, Nitza, for example, I know she's really interested in learning a bit more about XYZ. Why don't you tap her on the shoulder? So ensuring that there's somebody who has enough knowledge as it relates to you, and I'll tell you, it pays. So 10 years ago, when Lisa was announced as CEO of the company, I was really tired. I had worked with all the CEOs, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to just take a bit of a break. And she's like, you can't do that. I need your help. And anyway, we ended up having this conversation whereby she thought I was very black and white in my job. There wasn't a lot of gray in my world. And part of it was because I worked with Wall Street, and there was the SEC, and it was all total sidebar sometime over a beer. But she had the foresight to say to me, I don't even know you. Like, what is it that motivates you? What is it you want to do? I don't know anything about you. So we agreed to go on a journey. She asked me, could she be my mentor? And over that 6 months, we wrote down a list of the things that are important to me and what motivates me. And one of my key motivators is learning and growing. And the other list was, what were the things I imagined in an imaginary world that I might like to do at AMD over the next 10 years?
How wonderful.
We meet twice, well, we meet every day, but we meet twice a year to talk about me, and we take out that list once a year. And my job title is because of that list, right? I worked with Wall Street all the time. HR was on my list, marketing was on my list, IT was on my list. There were just lots of things. And she's committed, she's invested, she's a sponsor, because she now knows me really, really well. I got super lucky 20 years into my career. You too can be really lucky, and the way to do it is to make sure that somebody knows you and what motivates you and drives you. So there you go. Thank you for your question.
Is there any other questions? Kathy?
I have a question.
Oh, can you go to the mic, please? Thank you.
I have a question. Do you see a slowdown in the DEI trend, that companies are closing their DEI offices and it seems to be being pushed under the mat a little bit? Do you see that too? Or I just wondered, and what could we do? What do you recommend? I mean, see, you have some good techniques.
Thank you. It's a bit of a mixed bag. I don't see companies pushing their efforts and activities under the carpet, for want of a better analogy, but there are some offices and the formality of the title being removed in some companies. And that's because of some challenges in terms of legal challenges within some companies, sidebar cases, but also because some companies think that they'll have more success if they make it an integral part of their human resource activities as opposed to giving it a handle, or community affairs activities, or whatever way they look at it. So you're seeing a more broader approach than perhaps we've seen before. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing yet, because we're in the very early stages of it. I personally believe we should call it out, and we should have formal, identified, reportable activities, because we all react to metrics, and when we're measured, we all know we perform very well. So I think that continues to be important. So I would not want to see the measurement and metric capability decline, but it's something to watch very carefully, because it is a mixed bag right now. Thank you.
Teresa?
Teresa McLaurin, ARM. So you mentioned metrics, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah.
How do I get measured for a DEI activity?
Yeah.
How is that measured? What is some examples that you can think of?
Yeah. So, I mean, it can be daunting and difficult, because sometimes the metrics may not necessarily apply to what the activities that actually occur in your company, right? So, and then there's a whole conversation around quotas. Oh my God, do we want quotas? No, we don't want quotas. So what we do is we have done a broad a look across all the geographic demographics of our employee population. And we've looked at underrepresented groups, and we've looked at females at engineering, at AMD in particular, and we look to increase that by a percentage every year that's higher than the industry. So we benchmark ourselves against our competitors. We publish that internally as our goal, and we have the HR team help manage it, as opposed to making it rest on every manager's shoulders. We found through centralizing it in HR, it's made it more of an effective activity. We have built down into the organization managers needing to nominate a certain number of underrepresented community employees or female employees into certain learning and development courses, or having a certain percentage of their team being dedicated to feedback activities or coaching activities that the company sponsors. We also bring our leadership into speaking at external events, and making sure that we're measuring that and how we're driving that forward. And then as it relates to community activities in particular, we also measure that internally to be involved in our community, so that you're getting indirect exposure to the society in which the company is represented, so that we can advance that as well. And then last but not least, everybody is mandated to do unconscious bias training. You get a report on that on a quarterly, the leader of the organization gets a report on that on a quarterly basis to make sure that it's being executed too, because we feel strongly about it.
Okay, thanks. I know we're out of time, but I just have one more question. So, that's been, at least
Yes.
especially in the U.S.
Yes.
So what do you do about that if you're trying to hire, say, more females to help round out the team? How do you find them?
Well, you need to be creative. So we have modified how we write job specs. So job specifications, some of the language that are used in job specifications, we wouldn't even know it, but can be off-putting to certain underrepresented groups in applying for a job. So we have run those through more inclusive language to attract people when they see the job description. We have worked on returnship programs, so bringing experienced people who may have left to go start their own family for a while that have been out of the workplace. We've developed an onboarding program for them to come back into the workplace and sort of fast track them over a 2 to 3 year period before they can go back into a like level job maybe when they left. We have very flexible programs, so the days of working 8 to 6 or whatever way you want to define your work day, way more flexible now. If you can get all your work done at a certain time of a 24-hour clock, that works for you and it's reasonable and agreeable to your manager. If you're not, can't be in the workplace physically, a lot of that flexibility has really made a positive difference. Mm-hmm. But the way to really, really, really get this going is to invest in attracting underrepresented groups to STEM. I mean, and to do it consistently, coherently, so that we can build the next generation of semiconductor professionals is very, very important.
All right, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, thanks.
Thank you, Ruth, for
Great.
your time.
Yeah,
I know everyone's ushering us off
Sorry.
stage. But thank you so much for your insights.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
That was great.